Hello, I'm Cormac. You're listening to Queerly Beloved, supported by Amazon Music. In this series, I invite DJs and musicians, friends and allies from the LGBTQ+ community to talk about music, queerness, and anything else that shapes their unique story. It is my hope that in sharing our individual experiences, we can learn and grow and focus on our similarities rather than our differences. You can find all of the music mentioned in today's episode and each episode at the link in the episode description. This is a very special episode today. Firstly, because it is my first live episode. We recorded this live at the Amsterdam Dance Event, ADE. And secondly, because my guest is Josh Caffé. Josh is a multidisciplinary artist, producer, DJ, sometimes frontman of Paranoid London, the acid house duo. And I've known Josh for, over 20 years now. We were both resident DJs at seminal East London club Trailer Trash. So here it is, my chat with Josh Caffé live at ADE.
Thank you.
Josh, please, could you introduce yourself? Tell us how you identify and what it is you do.
So I am a singer-songwriter, DJ and producer. And I initially started off DJing, and I've been doing that for many years now, and started making music probably about 7 years ago. Collaborated with a lot of other producers, done stuff with Paranoid London, and then from then decided to make my own music and released solo music since 2018.
And we met in London.
We did, yeah.
Were you born in London?
Battersea.
Battersea,
yeah.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about, where you grew up and how music featured, or if it featured at all, actually, in your childhood?
So I came from a very musical household in terms of my dad used to be a DJ. Originally, we're from Uganda. And back in the 70s, my dad used to DJ in a club there called Club 79 or 69, I can't remember. And he used to travel around Africa and go and get records from various different countries and bring them back there. So when we grew up in London, we had all this kind of music around me. So there was lots of soul, lots of Congolese music, lots of R&B and hip-hop. So had that. And loads of parties as well when we were growing up.
Nice.
That was a very big thing. Lots of family members. My sister was also a DJ as well. And I think from her is where I really kind of took the idea that I wanted to do it myself when I was older. But yeah, we always just had lots of parties and music at home.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar situation. The house I grew up in was quite religious.
Yes, same here.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
But when music was involved, everybody kind of let go somehow. There was this freedom that happened, and music, I think, at such an early age became this kind of thing to look forward to and escape from maybe kind of a more conservative vibe. Yeah,
totally. I mean, in my household, my dad was Protestant and my mum is Catholic. So, they very much on Sunday would go to church and had that kind of system in place. And so at home, whenever we would celebrate birthdays and things like that, it was always like a good chance for us to get everybody around, and baptisms and christenings and all this kind of stuff. Like the religion side was like quite an important part to the family. But at the same time, we celebrated that, with parties.
Is there a record or a track that reminds you of those times, or something that you could say like those times growing up when there were parties happening, there was that community of family? Is there like a record in particular that...
Yeah, the Let Me Love You from Bonnie Mac. I think that really symbolised a lot of the gatherings that we used to have in the house, So like, for instance, we had people come around on Sunday, and my mum was and still is to this day, like a big host. She loves cooking and having people around to the house. And that was always a song that, you'd get to like 10 p.m. or something in the evening, and all the aunties and uncles are pretty drunk.
Pushing the tables out of the way.
Pushing the tables out of the way. I was like, quite young, and I'd be running around dancing to earn like £1.50 to go and buy like sweets the next day, which I'm not really quite sure how I feel about that now.
Well, you were earning the crust.
I was earning the coins from a young age. Yeah. But yeah, this song was a very big kind of staple song in our household, and yeah, it really for me symbolizes my childhood.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Very often when we grow up queer in a household, we tend to be the minority, even within the household, because it's not so often that you have gay parents. I mean, you do have them, but it's less often.
Yeah.
Or gay grandparents or brothers and sisters. Very often queer kids grow up the minority in the family, and I'm kind of interested to know what your understanding of queerness was, if there was one, or maybe even there might have been an artist that you noticed or felt something with.
Yeah, I think it took a very long time for me to understand my queerness, just because there wasn't anyone that was out in my family when I was growing up. Since then there's been people that that have come out, or my mum has told me about, and they're still not become kind of role models for me, I guess. But it was, it took a long time to kind of understand that for myself, just because I was like, okay, well, there's, what is queer? There wasn't really anything to explain that, I guess. And for instance, like my mum's brother, my Uncle Patrick, he was gay. And my mum told me probably 7 years ago, but I had a really close relationship with him when we were growing up, and he was very, really took me under his wing, and we got on very well. And it was all kind of like, when I found out that he was gay, I was like, wow, this makes so much sense. Like, you obviously saw this in me, and decided to kind of take me under his wing. So yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And how was it viewed? You said you grew up in a kind of religious household. Was it welcomed?
No, not really. I mean, my mum and dad were quite relaxed people, and my mum was a hairdresser, so she was around queens all the time. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But I think there was still this element of it was not spoken about. You know what I mean? So I know friends used to come. My mum's friends would come to the house, and looking back at it now, I'm like, they were all queens, and you know what I mean. But it was just never spoken about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that she was a very open-minded person, but I guess the religious side of things, and the African background that I have, just made it very hard to kind of accept or talk about.
Yeah. Yes, same in our household as well. There wasn't really much to celebrate about being different, and certainly not about being gay, as it was the case for me. I remember watching a rerun of Top of the Pops, and Mark Almond was on it, so it was replayed, and I remember hiding behind the sofa because he kind of it terrified me in a way.
Because I understand that.
Yeah, because I knew there was something there that was me.
Yeah.
And I was afraid of it.
Yeah.
Because I knew, I could sense that how he was perceived was very subversive.
I had the same with Boy George as well. That was similar thing. Yeah. It was very, and my mum loved his music. So she used to play it in the house all the time. And I'd just be like, oh, he's really weird, or, you know what I mean? I totally get that. So.
It's funny though, isn't it? Because Boy George kind of there was something very inoffensive about him. Grannies loved him.
Yeah.
But Mark Almond looks like he just crawled out of an S&M basement or something. So
which I'm sure he probably did, but that's a good thing. Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a particular record from that time, or of a queer artist or something that reminds you of that time?
I think for this, Tevin Campbell was someone that I really loved when I was growing up. And it's quite interesting with him because he's probably another artist that I guess everyone in the family and also everyone in the industry kind of knew he was gay, but he didn't come out until fairly recently. And I remember listening to his music and feeling really drawn to him and his music, and didn't really understand why. And again, what we were talking about with when you have these kind of people in your life and you're still trying to figure out your own thing.
Yeah.
It's, this particular song, Can We Talk, it really stuck with me. And it was quite interesting to see how his career kind of panned out, because he ended up being outed and there was all this kind of thing, and hasn't made music pretty much ever since, really, which is quite sad. But it was always something that everyone knew was oh yeah, he's gay, but we're not going to talk about it. But yeah, he definitely made some music that really helped me, I guess, when I was younger. and I didn't necessarily know why I did.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like how
Yeah.
you navigate towards that sensibility or sensitivity somehow. But especially at that time as well, to be out was a risk for any kind of career in the music industry.
Yeah.
It was, I think, like even Boy George never really said he was gay until much later, because you couldn't be out. It's great to see that change.
Yeah,
quite a lot,
definitely. But I guess it's still something in R&B and hip hop. It's still there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. There's so many artists that you look at and you're like, oh my God, you just come out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, each of their own, and they have to do this in when they feel comfortable. But it's definitely something that should change.
It's kind of great to see like Lil Nas X.
Yeah, exactly, and Frank Ocean, and people who have just gone, this is what we're doing. If you don't like it, you can F off. You know what I mean? And it shows that you can still have the career as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean like that's it, that your career's done because you've come out and you're not going to appeal to the masses. It's like, in some places, that's still a thing, but you can still be the artist that you want to be, Were
you still in Battersea at this time?
No, at this point we were in Acton.
I'm just wondering what raves you started going to in Battersea, but now I'm wondering what raves you went to in Acton.
Yeah, I mean, that time in Battersea was, there was not much. I was too young also at the time when we were there. And when we moved to Acton, I was in my early teens, and there wasn't really any raves there either. So it was going into like Hammersmith or Le Palais or Central London.
And those were your first
little dip and toes, yeah. And also going to Carnival. Notting Hill Carnival was a really big part of our family from like a young age, and then it was also a way for me to kind of go out clubbing as well, I guess, like from a young, I mean, I was, I could sneak into clubs from the age of like 13 because I was quite tall and and very kind of extroverted in that way, and also people didn't really give a shit at that time, and it was just like, get them in. But Carnival was a nice kind of introduction to being at kind of raves and the outdoor parties and discovering like, jungle and all these kind of music. So yeah.
I mean, we take it for granted now because, it's such a big part of our lives and our work. But do you remember like your first feelings like in a club or in a gay club or being around other queer people? Or, I mean, for some people, it's not so much the queer club, it's just the club.
Yeah.
And being around that kind of community. Do you remember those
I think,
times?
well, probably like when we met, I guess, like, that time really stuck with me. And, it was a really great time in London. It was a great time in Soho. And you had Nag 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 and The Cock and DTPM and all this stuff. And I remember going to Nag Nag and just being like, wow, like this is insane. Like such a big mixture of people. Everyone was like super dressed up. The music was really great. Like the vibe in there, it really, that was like a point where I met a lot of people, including yourself, like people like Hannah and Matt and Dan and stuff. And that's probably one of the strongest kind of clubbing experiences, I guess, from a queer point of view.
Yeah. So we're talking about Nag Nag Nag, this club in London in the early noughties.
Yeah.
I guess people were calling it electroclash, really, but it was a very punk aesthetic somehow. I remember the real feeling that it gave me in terms of music was just go home like just go home, get yourself a 4-track and a microphone and do something. It's kind of like the whole electroclash had its kind of punky element.
Exactly, it was quite raw and slightly tongue in cheek, and it was definitely a good musical time in London. I felt like there was so many good parties that you could go to, and so many live electroclash bands came from that. I mean, like Fisher Spooner and stuff that you were Scissor Sisters and your Peaches, Chicks on Speed.
Yeah,
and I still love that music to now.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it's great.
Same. I love some of the live.
Yeah,
the live stuff. Do you want to pick a record from that time, maybe? or from your early days of going?
I couldn't pick just one. I mean, Hand to Phone from Adult.
Yeah.
That was definitely one.
Still a great track.
Still a great track. I think Miss Kitten and the Hacker, the whole album, the first album, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Wordy Rapping Hood.
Yeah,
Chicks
it's
on
great.
Speed.
Yeah.
That's also a good one.
I forgot about that one.
There's loads. I could go on for like...
Okay, it's going to be a long playlist.
Yeah.
And then from that point, I kind of feel like this happened us in a way around the same time. But from that point, when did you make the transition into like, I want to make this into something else? Like, how did the DJing start?
The DJing started, well, I was with my then partner, Ivan, who, you know, and we decided, we were like, oh, do you know what, like, let's start DJing. And it was like a really just casual thing. I personally knew I wanted to do something in music, but I wasn't really sure what it was going to be. From like a young age, it's like, do I want to be an artist or a DJ like this? You know, I was still trying to figure it out. And being with Ivan, who had really great music taste, it just worked for us to do it like that. So, you know, we DJed as Cafe Latte for many years, as you know.
Yes.
And, ended up getting married and had like a great time. And then he decided to stop DJing, and I carried it on.
Didn't you get married in Las Vegas?
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Planned. It was planned. It wasn't like...
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, we had a big wedding party in London, and then had the wedding in Vegas. Went to LA, and then we drove to Vegas, and then got married, and then drove back.
So DJing and music has kind of been a part of that side of your life as well.
And also as well, being around, you know, people like Hannah and people who were, and you and Jonjo, who were starting their careers just then. I guess seeing that and watching you guys play, I guess, kind of rubbed off to me in a way, you know. I think seeing that, I was like, well, actually, no, this is really good. And, you know, I loved how you guys played, and I guess...
There was definitely a rough and ready element. I mean, I remember playing at Trailer Trash and stuff, and, you know, sometimes you didn't have a monitor.
Yeah. But, and Hannah would be on a box because she was so short, like behind the DJ booth. I had like a crate for Hannah.
Yeah. But it was very fun. I'm kind of glad of those times now because whatever, thankfully, I technical setups are a lot better for me these days, but you can make it work. Yeah. You know, there's nothing going to happen that you can't handle after you've played in those.
I mean, I remember when me and Ivan did our first couple of gigs at the Red Lion pub in Hoxton, and like the CDJs was so bad. Like one of them, it just kept on skipping throughout the whole time. So then we had to connect the other one, a laptop to the mixer as well. So this is why our mixing was really bad at first. Like we definitely just did not learn in the best way. Yeah. But it was dodgy as hell. And every Sunday we'd still go there and do it, and it'd be like, okay, we're gonna mess up on the mix here, and everyone would be like, yeah, cool. Yeah.
I think there's something about those times that was very forgiving.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I was glad of it as well.
Yeah.
At the start.
It made me realize it's like, okay, look, as long as you know and you have good taste and you can play something good, and as long as the tracks afterwards are good, don't focus so much on that side.
Which brings me to the next track. What were you playing? After all the kind of that inspiration of the Ugandan background and the London background and then the Electric Clash, like what kind of stuff were you playing?
So I've got a big love and fascination for New York City, and I have like family members that are from there, and New York in the like late 80s, early 90s, you know, the kind of queer scene there was like, is something that really resonates with me. And the music that came from that as well was very much the kind of style I played when I started DJing. So a lot of kind of, I guess you call it bitch house tracks, lots of like Junior Vasquez and Danny Tenaglia and Sound Factories. Like it was just always a place I was like, if I was, you know, I would have loved to have gone. You know what I mean? The music that spawned from that was like, to this day is still
absolutely
like amazing.
Time machine.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, it's like I don't know if you ever go on YouTube and you watch like the old, like there's loads of really raw old footage from in the club, and it's like I could literally watch it for hours.
I do that with clubs, but I haven't done it for the Sound Factory.
Yeah, the Sound Factory one is really good, and there's loads of stuff on MTV as well, like old MTV clips. They go down and interview Junior Vasquez and in the club. Like,
I think as well that time in particular was, you know, I think a lot of queer DJs were leading the way in terms of DJ culture.
Yeah.
Which also changed since then. And now it feels like there's more urgency around inclusion and visibility. But initially, at those times at least, it was very much a queer thing in a way, in terms of the bigger DJs, as you say, like Tenaglia and...
And they were remixing, you know, people like, you know, they were like the go-to people to, you know, if you did like a pop record, you'd have a dance remix and it would be Junior or Danny, so like Madonna or Cher, and you know they pretty much remixed everyone in the 90s. It's kind of crazy.
That would have been a great time to be. In the 90s, it would have been a lot of fun. You have to pick a record for that time.
LSD, Just Like a Queen.
That's Junior Vasquez. I think it's his alter ego.
Yes, it is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, everything from LSD Alias is great.
Yeah.
And it's great. That was just something that I would always play with a lot of Mike Q stuff. And, yeah.
It has a bit of a Mr. Fingers feel to
yes.
it.
Yeah. It's got the sample track in there, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's an acid version, which is really good. And
you know, as queer people, statistically, we are 3 times more likely to face depression or addiction or mental health challenges. And I think a parallel to that is that often working in music, there's a nomadic kind of isolated aspect to that also. So I'm always interested to ask my friends when I meet them, and for this series to kind of know your experience of that, if you're comfortable talking about those things. And I guess it's a sanity practice, really, if you have any things that help you manage that, or what your experience of that topic is, really.
Mental health is massively important for me. I mean, I have social anxiety, and I've had it for a very long time, and trying to manage that with what we do, and you know, being in clubs. And before I started DJ, I worked in PR and fashion PR, and it was like the hardest thing to do because it's such a people-facing thing. And in a way, now I look back at it and I'm like, maybe I chose that career to kind of confront it in a way. And I think that's the same thing. Well, obviously music I love doing, but you obviously want to try and face these things. And then as I've got older, it's got better, but you just have coping mechanisms in place. And one thing I've got really good at doing now is just having like the self-care thing, just having time to recognize like how you're feeling and actually take it in and go like, you know, you're not in a good headspace or this, and address it rather than kind of cover it up and allow things to like overtake you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's quite hard. And when we're traveling and touring all the time, like, and you don't stop, it's kind of like, you know, you just have to have those moments to kind of check in and, you know, have off days.
Yeah.
Like, off days are like massively important for me.
Yeah, you were telling me you're very good at that.
Yeah,
just
it's like sometimes it's 3 days, sometimes it's
whatever
2.
it takes.
Yeah, but it's just, you know, and not having any guilt about doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's like you are not going to get hold of me today, and I'm going to go to the cinema or I'm going to go for a walk and not feel bad about it. It takes a long time to get to that point.
Get to that point. Yeah, it almost seems like a funny contradiction in a way to like feel anxious, or in my case, I managed depression, and then put yourself in the middle of a room playing records. It's like, why would you do that? Why on earth would you do that? And I had a moment of performing in a band as well, and I kind of realized that on a good day, that was a great experience, and on a bad day, that was harrowing for me. I found it really difficult, whereas the booth kind of is a buffer. I take it less personally because it's not usually my music I'm playing. So I kind of feel like facilitating or presenting something. So I kind of,
and there's a bit of a barrier, I guess. You know what I mean? Obviously, you want to connect with the crowd, but you're kind of, you know, it's like you can allow yourself to go in to your own world, I guess, a bit, and still connect with people. Yeah. You know? But yeah, I mean, like, but the performing side, like, took a really long time to get like used to that and being on stage, and the anxiety of going on stage never goes away. It's the same with DJing as well. Like, I think if, you know, I still get really nervous before a gig, whether it's in a really small club, like 200 people, or like, but in the way, I don't know, it's like, I'm happy that I still have that in a weird way. It's kind of, you need to kind of have I guess it's like a drive and just go, you care basically.
Yeah, you
know?
care.
Yeah. I remember when I first started doing stuff with Paranoid London, and we did a gig in Lisbon, and they didn't tell me how big this gig was going to be. And I think this is like the 3rd time I was performing with them. And we were opening for Nina Kravitz, and we got to this huge kind of like center, and I was like walking around, and I was like, with the sound guy, I was like, oh, okay, so like which room? And they were like, this room. And I was like, it's like, how many people is this? And it's like 10,000 people. I was like, I just had to kind of like hide. I was like, okay, yep, that's fine. three shots of tequila later, like, you know, went on stage, and it was like, I've never felt the anxiety I did after coming off that gig. Like, I literally had to go and sit down in a room and just be like, can you give me 10 minutes to just get my head around that? Because it was insane. Do you have a character? You know, some people have like a character. What, a Sasha Fierce?
Yeah, like a Sasha Fierce.
Yeah, but it's weird because I don't, I don't like consciously go like, that's who I'm going to, I've got this character. It just kind of naturally comes on stage. I mean, for that particular gig, I was nervous until the last 20 minutes of the set where I kind of felt like because I think I was focusing so much on the people that weren't dancing. And then there would be there were so many people that were like,
why did they come to gigs?
Yeah, exactly.
Just
I
don't
literally
come.
zoned in and be like, right, him. Like, how can I make them dance rather than the general people that all sitting there going, my brain just completely disregarded that.
Or people on their phones.
Yeah, or people, God, yeah.
Just don't come to gigs, please.
Yeah. It drives me insane. But I think there was an element of, this kind of extroverted version of me comes on stage and then very much disappears as soon as it's done.
I find that fascinating because I think like that story of who you are, in a way, whether it's DJing or performing, you kind of figure that out through the creative process of your work in a way. Like I feel like a lot of my life skills I learned in the booth. Yeah. It's kind of a cathartic thing that maybe comes with having a job in the arts or something artistic.
Definitely. Yeah. I think writing and making music, that's been a similar thing for me. And I think whenever I've gone into like making stuff, especially for myself, there has been an element of creating a kind of character that's, alongside it. Partly that's to like kind of protect myself, I guess. But then at the same time, you want to be I like to be a very honest artist in how I write and what I want to say, vocally. So
I love your music. I think you have a really great balance between writing from your experience, but also something that's a bit more objective and universal. Because when I write, sometimes it's too personal, and you have to learn how to make it more universal and relatable. Yeah, but I feel like you do that very well.
I think writing lyrics in a very abstract way helps a lot. I think you can kind of drop messages in there and not be so direct, I guess. Do you know what I mean? I don't really like writing songs in a very kind of standard way of like verse, chorus, because then if I do that, I think I'd be very open and a bit too like honest in my lyrics. Yes. But doing things in a very abstract way just kind of allows you to just almost drop hints of like what you want to do, and you can get away with saying phrases or, which may not necessarily make sense to everybody else, but you're kind of telling that story, and it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's how you feel about it as well. That translates.
You can control how much you give away, I guess, lyrically.
Yeah, I had that experience also recently where I wasn't feeling very good, and I remembered to write. And actually, I just started to write what was going on for me, and it's such a helpful process. I also do it like when I'm traveling. I write a lot on planes. I find traveling strangely creative. On a good day, like being in between spaces, I find it quite.
I've got a lot better at writing stuff down as well, because for such a long time, my memory's getting shit now, so I can't just be like, oh, I remember that, and then like 2 days later I'm
clubs.
like, exactly, beer. Writing on the go is really good, and getting into the habit of doing it it's really important. Definitely.
And for those moments maybe where you need to recharge or you don't feel great, is there any music that you lean on in particular or go back to?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what's kind of got me into that space. I mean, like loose ends in general. Like I've like that's another album, or the Look How Far album was something that I grew up with at home, because we had that. We had a lot of Anita Baker. We had a lot of Soul to Soul and Sounds of Blackness. So their music was always in the house. And my aunt like loved loose ends and bought me the vinyl when I was younger. So that's definitely something that I like listening to when I travel, and also just to kind of zone out from everything, because the songs are also very symbolic of being Black and in London in that time. There's a lot of songs that have a lot of meaning in there, and that kind of resonated with me.
In my experience in London, from the times where we were hanging out, there was some kind of segregation somehow between the Black queens and everyone else. And a lot of, in a very general way, a lot of those queens were going to like Queer Nation or more kind of R&B stuff. Yeah. How was it being like an electronic head in that?
It was, I mean, it was hard, because I think now going out to like places like, there's so much Black presence in these clubs. But back then, it was usually me or like me and Charmaine, for instance. That's how I kind of bonded with her. Charmaine's a friend of ours, by the way, a Black friend. And it used to kind of bother me because I wasn't always welcome in the kind of queer nation bootylicious things, because I went to a lot of like electro parties and people would be like, well, why are you listening to that? That's white people music. You know what I mean? So I felt and then when I was in the electro spaces, I wasn't always get acknowledged as much. Do you know what I mean? So I kind of sat in between like both things and just being like, well, how do I navigate this? Do you know what I mean? It's like, which also in turn affected how you meet people, how you date, and
absolutely,
you know.
And do you think that's changed at all?
Yeah, massively. Yeah. For instance, like Adonis or something, you know, you look at Adonis, like it's kind of like equivalent of the kind of trailer trash, you know, nag days. It's so nice to go and play there and just see everyone, you know what I mean? There's so many POC people that go. It's like, it's great.
I want to ask you, like, currently from those days to this day, what are you playing at the moment?
I'm really enjoying just kind of going across the board with stuff. I've been making some music with Hannah recently, and we've made a kind of drum and bass jungle EP, and it's such a like beautiful thing for me and Hannah to make. We both, her especially, came from a drum and bass background, and we've always loved the music and wanted to make a record that was a kind of queer version of the stuff that we went out to, because back then, you know, drum and bass and jungle just was not queer.
Absolutely.
At all. You know what I mean? Like, and being in those spaces was like, it was like you just had to be like, you're here for the music, and that's it. So getting older, there was always an element of like, you know, I really want to make music that symbolized that part of my childhood or growing up, because it was such an important part for me and also for Hannah, but do it from a very kind of queer point of view, and you know, write and sing vocals in there rather than use samples, which a lot of the music tended to have back then. So that's kind of influenced a lot of music that I've been playing now. And there's a track I mentioned called Jungle Techno, and me and Hannah played at Field Maneuvers recently, which is a festival in the UK, and we decided to do a drum and bass kind of or rave set, which was the first time we'd done it, and it went down really well, and it was such a natural thing for us to do. Yeah. So I was like, okay, you know what? So I think I'm gonna kind of dip into this a little bit.
Nice. Yeah. I think people are always happy to hear something unexpected. And you know, as you know, as a DJ, if it's authentic for you, they get it.
Yeah, exactly.
And the people who don't. But, you know, if you play a sound that is authentic for you, then it works. I think we need more queer drum and bass.
We do, yeah. We
definitely do.
Well, Sistrix will be out next year. plug.
Is there anything you want to plug?
I've got an album out.
You do, yes.
I released an album a couple of months ago now on Fancy Records. So I'm kind of focusing on the live show at the moment. I played at Is Burning yesterday and did a live show there, and we'll be doing a few more things in London. But it's nice to finally, because I made this album a while back, just when we were coming out of lockdown, and there was so much back and forth on when it was going to come out. You know what it's like with these things, with vinyl delays and everything. So it kind of, I sat on it for a very long time, and that's always a really bad thing for me, because then you keep going back to things and you're like, oh God, like maybe I should change this, and am I happy with that? And then, you know, like in the end, I just had to kind of go like, that's that, it's done.
It's done.
And finally it came out, and it's been a good release, like weight off the shoulder, basically. Yeah.
It can be hard to get passionate about stuff that for you is old. Like for the listener, it's new, but you've already moved on and you're doing other things. And to go back and kind of get in that headspace and promote it. The album's amazing.
Thank you.
So I think that brings us to the end of this episode.
Thank you
very much, Josh. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. It's nice to do this with you. So
thank you. You've been listening to Queerly Beloved with me, Cormac. You can find the playlist of all the music featured in today's episode in the episode description. And while you're there, please do hit subscribe so you don't miss out on my conversations with other talented people. A big thank you to Michael Lane, my producer, my manager, Melissa Taylor at Tailored Communication, and of course to Amazon Music for their support. Take care of yourself. All the best. Bye.